Welcome back, class. Before I begin, I'd like to again thank our host, Professor Chris, our opponents, Cass and Karina, and my partner, Matt, for all of their guidance and hard work during this debate. Now, let's get down to business. Up to this point, our opponents have spoken to you about why they believe PAS should be banned across the US, and in the process, highlighted a handful of the misconceptions I warned the audience to be wary of. Starting with Karina's speech, her first claim was, if patients could get out of PAS without dying, would patients still choose PAS? The simple answer is yes, and here's why. We really have to break down what the phrase terminal illness means. According to the American Cancer Society, a terminal condition is one that is life-limiting and will cause permanent unconsciousness or death in the near future. Under the basis of this definition, it is highly unlikely that a patient who is already experiencing immense amounts of suffering would miraculously recover from their illness. Not to mention, a Chicago study involving patients in hospice programs showed that 63% of the time, doctors overestimate their terminally ill patient's survival. In the rare event that a patient were to live longer than expected, their health would only continue to decline and they would have to endure even greater suffering than they already were, so PAS would still serve as a viable method to prematurely end their agony. Next, Karina spoke about her grandfather who passed away from epilepsy. She argued that if he had the option of ending his life through PAS, her family would not have gotten to spend as much time with him. A part of the story that I'd like to emphasize is that Karina was able to go on walks with her grandpa and go to breakfast with him. This is an indicator that her grandfather was probably not suffering to the same degree as patients who typically go through with PAS do. The procedure is designed for patients who are so sick that they can't even try to enjoy their favorite activities anymore without writhing in pain. Regardless of the severity of the illness, in the event that Karina's family convinced her grandpa to try and fight till the end and he agreed, no one would even bother them to glance in PAS's direction. We aren't asking every terminally ill person in America to shorten their life. All the affirmative side wants is for them to have the option to do so. Moving on to Cass's speeches, her first argument was that patients shouldn't be encouraged to die. Instead, we should give them hope that they'll survive. Again, I'll quickly reassert that a terminal illness is incurable and leads to permanent unconsciousness or death in the near future. So, what the opposition is suggesting is that doctors directly lie to their patients' faces just to instill a false sense of hope within them. Let me point out that any lie from a doctor that causes harm to the patient or disguises fraud is highly illegal. In my eyes, telling them that they have a chance of making a full recovery when they clearly don't violates both of these terms. Continuing, Cass argued that if life-sustaining treatments were offered at a lower cost, no one would want to go through with PAS. Here's the problem with that rationale. Offering treatments at a lower cost would ultimately cause the organizations supplying those treatments to make less money. That means less money to put towards hiring highly trained and qualified workers. As I touched on in my first speech, there have already been numerous complaints about hospice care workers being unprofessional. Imagine how much the rate of complaints would increase if hospitals had to settle for mediocre, undertrained healthcare workers to save money. So, the opposition is proposing that we decrease the quality of end-of-life care, and to make matters worse, the terminally ill can't go through with PAS either. It's a lose-lose situation. Following that statement, Cass claimed that patients who go through with PAS are often depressed or face mental illness. This is untrue because one of the various eligibility requirements that must be met before a patient can be cleared to receive PAS is that they must undergo a mental health evaluation to ensure that their judgment is not being impaired by a psychological or psychiatric disorder. Additionally, a study done by Robert Perlman, an MD, concluded that the leading reasons for patients deciding to go through with PAS were feeling weak, tired, and uncomfortable, along with loss of bodily function, neither of which have to do with the person's mental state. Next, Cass went into an argument about how a vast majority of doctors in the US will not participate in PAS. Again, evidence find this to be incorrect. A study done by the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine revealed that when surveying a random sample of 1,000 US doctors, 60% supported the legalization of PAS. 40% is certainly not a vast majority, and with over half of doctors viewing PAS as a valid practice, patients would not have much difficulty in finding a physician to perform the procedure for them. Lastly, Cass said that legalizing PAS would damage the levels of trust between healthcare workers and patients. All I have to say in response to this is, if you have enough confidence in a physician to allow them to help you end your life, doesn't that mean you trust them a whole lot? To conclude, you've now heard both sides, and after all of the misconceptions I've just erased, it should be crystal clear who the winner of this debate is. I vow to you, our respected audience, that I would prove the ways in which the benefits of PAS heavily outweighed the minor drawbacks, and I strongly believe that I've kept my word. So one last time, I will passionately encourage you to cast your vote in favor of a practice that promotes autonomy, normalizes empathy and compassion, implements a safe and structured practice, improves the trust levels between physicians and patients, and permits the terminally ill to die in an honorable fashion. Vote for the affirmative team to uphold your highest moral standards.